The Oracl3 Network.
We have an active shooter. We have an active shooter inside the warehouse.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired. 4:15 a.m. Route 91. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter,
mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, we're following breaking news, confirmation of a shooting at a school in South Carolina. What you're looking at right now are live pictures of Townville Elementary School. This is in Anderson County, South Carolina. What we know at this hour, emergency crews say 2 students have been shot. We don't have word yet on their condition. We know the fire department says it has been told to be on standby. The school is being cleared at this moment. Of course, as we have updates, we will give them to you. We also know a life flight helicopter has been dispatched there to Townville Elementary School in Anderson County. Again, no more specifics. 2 students shot. We'll bring you more as soon as we have it.
The Active Shooter podcast has covered over 50 different mass murder or shooting events since its inception, and each case carries some similarities to the others. Oftentimes, the shooter has a history of mental illness, or a grudge against a particular group. The mass shooters are rarely caught, tried, and convicted, as most take their own life, rather than face the consequences of their horrific actions. A number of the shooters we have covered are minors, who experienced bullying or deeply rooted family issues, including abuse and neglect. Today's case is one of the more unique ones, in that the shooter was barely a teenager. He was caught and currently resides in an adult prison system, serving a life sentence for murdering 2 innocent people and wreaking havoc upon an entire elementary school full of teachers and students. Innocent victims who were in no way prepared for the ways their lives were about to change. What started as a typical Wednesday for so many ended as the most horrific and tragic day imaginable.
Active Shooter the podcast is a High Five Holly production, and I'm your host, JT. If you've listened to our prior episodes, you know that the Active Shooter podcast team has taken the No Notoriety pledge, and we will not be sharing the real name of the shooters that we cover. We will be giving the shooters a pseudonym and refer to them by that name throughout the episode. This will help in clearing up any confusion in the story, while remaining true to our pledge and not naming the shooter by their actual name.
We will refer to today's shooter as Dan. Townville, South Carolina, is located about 40 miles southwest of Greenville in Anderson County, which is near the Georgia border. The Townville Elementary School, located at 105 State Road in Townville, South Carolina, began classes as usual on Wednesday, September 28, 2016. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, back at Dan's home, trouble was brewing. Dan had just turned 14 about 3 weeks before, and it seems that this turn around the sun was a difficult one for Dan. He was increasingly causing trouble at home and was growing ever more frustrated with his father. The night before the shooting, Dan claimed his dad was drunk and complained to Dan's mom that he felt he wasn't being compensated adequately for some chicken coops he was building and selling. Dan didn't like hearing his father complain, and this irked him. The following morning, Dan woke up to an angry dad again. This time, he was upset because Dan's homework wasn't complete. His dad left the house to run errands, with an admonishment to Dan to get his homework done before he got back. Frustrated and indignant, Dan waited for his dad to leave, and then proceeded into his parents' room, opened the top drawer to his dad's bedside table, pulled out a firearm, and started to load it. He didn't realize he was using the wrong ammunition for that particular gun, a Springfield Armory XD-40 S&W caliber pistol. Despite his ignorance over the ammunition, Dan did know how to shoot. He had shot this particular gun, as well as several others, on other occasions. While Dan's dad kept the pistol in his nightstand, the rest of his weapons were securely locked in a gun safe. It is estimated that there were about 20 to 30 guns in the cabinet. After he loaded the gun, Dan replaced the gun in the drawer and went back to the family room to wait for his father to return. It was between 11 and 11:30 a.m. when his dad returned home and went to sit and review the household bills. He was completely unaware that he would not be alive in another 10 minutes or less. Dan walked back into his parents' room, retrieved the loaded pistol, walked up behind his dad, and shot him in the head. Not once, but 3 times. He then calmly went to his animals, kissing his dogs and rabbit, Floppy, goodbye. Dan would later reveal in his interrogation that he truly loved his animals. Yet, on the other hand, when a psychiatrist evaluated him, Dan spoke of torturous behavior towards animals. After killing his dad, Dan donned an airsoft ammo vest and a hat. He secured about 15 bullets into his vest, stole the keys to his dad's black pickup truck, and headed towards the Townville elementary school. Dan drove the stolen truck right into a fence that surrounded the school. Out on the playground was an entire first-grade class that were celebrating a birthday, complete with cupcakes that bore a Batman logo on them. Dan exited the truck and fired his gun into the air several times before lowering his weapon and shooting at the class.
Townville school road, law enforcement, reference to possible shooting.
Frantically, teachers scrambled to usher their students back into the safety of the school. Dan hopped the fence and started to fire directly at the children.
They told us to get in the bathrooms, which has never happened in a drill, so we started thinking it was real. And before all this happened, before they came on the announcements, we heard gunshots outside. And then they told us to get in the bathrooms. We had a couple people that were crying.
What made this rampage much more difficult for himself, but likely saved countless lives, was the fact that his gun jammed after about 12 seconds and continued to jam after each shot.
Townville Elementary, we have an active shooter. We have a child down. We do not know who this man is. It's going to be okay, I got help coming as quickly as they can. We have somebody with a wrap holding his legs from bleeding. Is he conscious? Is he breathing? No, he's going in and out of consciousness.
Between the tears and the terror.
The first 911 call was placed at approximately 1:44 p.m. Police arrived 12 minutes later. During those 12 excruciatingly long minutes, Dan threw his vest and gun towards the playground out of sheer exasperation.
The initial call come in to 911 center today at 1:45 from a teacher in a classroom at Townville Elementary School stating that an armed male on the school grounds and a student had been shot.
He was so annoyed that his gun continued to jam, and the reality of his situation was sinking in. Dan was screaming and sobbing, quote, I'm sorry. And why did I do this?
Threw his arms up and we're just saying he gave up.
Without knowing what to do next, he called his paternal grandparents, alerting them to the damage and destruction he caused. They told him to stay put, they were coming to the school, and were taking Dan to turn himself in to the police. Because his story was so hysterical and discombobulated, Dan's grandmother went to his home. She couldn't understand what Dan was trying to say and thought he could really be at home. When the poor woman arrived at the house, she was confronted with a sight that no parent, no matter how old or young their child is, should ever see. There lay her child, her son. He was dead, shot to death by his own child.
She could not make out what he was saying because he was crying and upset.
One 6-year-old student was shot in the foot and rushed to ANMed Health and was released the following day. Megan Hollingsworth, a teacher, was shot in the shoulder, and she was also taken to ANMed and released the next day.
The teacher does have a wound on her. She keeps saying she's okay. I see something in your jacket.
Another 6-year-old was injured, sustaining superficial wounds that didn't require medical attention. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for Jacob Hall. He was shot in the femoral artery and taken immediately to Greenville Health System Children's Hospital, losing massive amounts of blood along the way. Poor Jacob lost over 75% of his blood, which caused him to go into cardiac arrest.
He said, "Miss Sanchez, my leg hurts. Something's wrong with my leg." I told him to hold on, and I went and picked him up. He looked really bad, and he was already turning gray color.
Was he crying?
No, Jacob was laying there lifeless, and there was blood all around him.
Needing emergency surgery, Jacob was airlifted by helicopter to Greenville Memorial Hospital. While being transported, Jacob stopped breathing, but he was revived. Once again, during surgery, he stopped breathing and was revived a second time. Sadly, Jacob succumbed to his injuries, silently passing to the other side 3 days after he was shot. A GoFundMe was established for the family, raising $126,000.
We were in the middle of science, and she just handed out our tornado sheets because we were going to go on a computer and do some research. Our principal came on the announcements, and she said, "We are on lockdown," and we all went to the corner beside our computers, and we all hunkered down as low as we could get. We all just started to cry.
Before Dan's grandparents arrived, a volunteer firefighter named Jamie Brock noticed Dan and overcame him until the police arrived. It wasn't difficult, given that Dan had thrown his gun when it continuously jammed.
And what'd you say to him?
Well, at first he said that he was sorry. And I asked him, I said, "Why did you do this?" And he said that he didn't believe in God anymore.
Jamie later received an award for subduing Dan, yet, when the time came to accept the award, Jamie made known that he believed the true heroes were the teachers who risked their lives to save their students. Eerily, the school had practiced an active shooter drill less than a week before this tragedy.
First of all, talking about the firefighter in question that helped subdue the subject, wants to remain humble and kind of quiet about it. We spoke to one of his chief officers, and he states he's a proud member of the Townville Volunteer Fire Department and did nothing that any of the other volunteer firefighters wouldn't have done. So with that said, I don't think there's anyone amongst us that doesn't believe that firefighter Brock is absolutely a hero to us and the whole community.
After being taken into custody, Dan was brought to the sheriff's office for an interrogation. Before they began, police brought him some McDonald's so he would be more comfortable while being questioned. During this time, Dan admitted he was due to start therapy soon, and asked if his relatives would be to visit him while he was in jail.
And while he